Everything is political. Anyone who tells you otherwise is either lying or simply not thinking clearly. We should start with a quick discussion of what politics actually means. Grok provided the following definitions. The classical definition, Aristotle's, is politics is the art or science of governing a city-state, think polis, or by extension any organized society. It involves determining how a community should be ordered and how power should be exercised for the common good. The modern definition, often attributed to Harold Lasswell, with echoes in Max Weber, politics is about who gets what, when, and how. The process of allocating scarce resources, resolving conflicts, and exercising authority within a group, organization, or society. The broader view of politics is politics encompass all activities involving the acquisition, exercise, and maintenance of power. This includes government, elections, policymaking, diplomacy, lobbying, activism, and even informal power dynamics in workplaces, families, or social circles. The concise takeaway: politics is fundamentally group decision-making. Since groups are made up of individuals, group decision-making necessarily flows from individual decision-making. If decision-making is at the root, then values are central, because our values should drive our decisions. Consider a simple example: valuing human life. A person who genuinely values human life will respond very differently to a burning building filled with babies than someone who does not. In practice, some people make decisions without consciously consulting their values. However, such individuals usually remove themselves from meaningful influence one way or another, so they can reasonably be set aside for this analysis. Where do values come from? The sources are varied: parents, religion, culture, mentors, biology, personal experience, reason, or even divine revelation. We can reasonably gather all these influences under one label: worldview. The fascinating thing about worldviews is that there is almost certainly one correct worldview, the one that most accurately corresponds to reality. If God exists, then only God possesses the perfectly correct worldview. The rest of us are doing our best to approximate it as closely as possible. Why should we care about aligning with this correct, reality-matching worldview? Well, because our worldview shapes our values, which shapes our decisions, which shape everything else. Decisions rooted in a flawed worldview often carry a high cost. For example, if you believe people are inherently good and trustworthy in all circumstances, you are more likely to expose yourself to malicious actors by failing to take basic precautions. The tragic case of Joshua Boyle and Caitlin Coleman illustrates this danger. As a general rule, it is unwise to travel to places where people may have strong incentives to harm or kill you. Possessing God's worldview would mean knowing everything, seeing the world exactly as it is. Since complete and absolute knowledge is impossible for finite humans, we must settle for worldviews built from the best available truths, assembled with intellectual honesty and rigor. In short, we want a worldview as close to reality as possible. Over time, a person can deliberately empty and repack their worldview box with tested fragments of truth. Those who do this consistently belong to what we might call the truth seekers class. They are willing to invest the time and effort to dig deep and examine foundations. Ideally, everyone would join this class, but not everyone chooses to. You may initially inherit your worldview from your parents and culture, but at some point, usually in adulthood, you must take personal responsibility for what you believe and why you believe it. Failing to do so means allowing others to make your most important decisions for you by default, as you operate on unexamined programming they installed. In my own case, I hold a biblical worldview. That is, a worldview grounded in the teachings of the Bible. It informs all my downstream decisions, from how I treat my family and interact with others to how I vote. I may be wrong about certain details, but this framework has served me well overall. Notably, the most troubled areas of my life have been those where I deviated furthest from biblical principles. So, when someone tells you not to make things political, they are usually revealing a permissive worldview and a lack of serious truth-seeking. At the end of the day, ideas have consequences. A worldview is simply a collection of ideas about how the world works. The political direction of a nation is ultimately the collective average of the worldviews held by its people. If a nation's dominant worldview is significantly flawed, if the majority believes demonstrably false things, that nation is on a path toward self-destruction. Reality is undefeated. So to summarize, worldview flows to values, which flows to decision-making, which flows to politics.